Elie Cantin-Nantel here for True North at the Conservative Party in Canada's National Convention in Quebec City, which is wrapping up now. Behind me, you can see people wrap things up. I'm here with our managing editor and host of the Andrew Lawton Show, the one and only Andrew Lawton. Andrew, what did you make of this convention?
Well, I'm just glad I don't have to interview anyone anymore, that I'm being interviewed, because I've spent the last 3 days asking everyone questions. It was really interesting. Now, I should say for context, I've never been to a Conservative convention before. I've been to a couple of provincial party conventions in the past. So at the same time, I've been able to see a pretty good sense of what these things are about. And, the one thing is that there's been a lot of malaise in the Conservative Party over the last many years, simply because the party has been just losing. It lost in 2015 with Stephen Harper. It lost in 2019 with Andrew Scheer. It lost in 2021 with Erin O'Toole. And each of those changes in leader was fraught with a number of challenges as well and a lot of internal turmoil. Whereas right now there's a Conservative Party that is pretty united behind Pierre Poilievre. The People's Party of Canada has not really been succeeding all that much after its strong showing in 2021. I've spoken to people here that were like PPC diehard supporters that are now supporting the Conservatives. So there's a level of optimism in this convention that I think we have not seen in the Conservative Party for several years.
I would agree. When I spoke to everybody, I did not meet one person who told me I was dissatisfied with Pierre Poilievre. And before I started doing journalism, I used to work in politics. And I remember under the other leaders, you would often find people who would tell me, not the biggest fan, I'll vote for him because he's not Trudeau. But that was usually the line versus here, people will actually vote for Poilievre. What do you think Poilievre has been able to do that others have not been able to do? Because as we saw last night with his speech, there was a lot of momentum, there was a lot of people, there was a lot of energy, and we did not see that with the other two leaders.
Well, one thing that I will point out is that in the last, the leadership races that elected O'Toole and Scheer, there was really a question of which group each was appealing to. Like Andrew Scheer won because of social conservatives, and Erin O'Toole won because of people that were kind of the more blue Tory types with some support from social conservatives. But it was very much an us versus them, the red Tories versus the blue Tories in some way. Whereas Pierre Poilievre won on the first ballot, and he had a margin of victory that even Stephen Harper didn't have when he ran for the leadership of the first Conservative Party. So I think what he's done is, at least for now, united most of the party in a way his predecessors haven't. And that means that even on the convention floor, there wasn't a lot of bickering about the type of stuff you see parties internally bickering about.
Right, no, for sure. And I would say back when the leadership race was happening, the diverse support he was getting from social conservatives, some red Tories, from people in the establishment class, it was a very diverse, and we had not seen that with these other candidates. What we saw at this convention, though, is issues that Pierre Poilievre has not really been keen to talk about himself, and I'm referring to gender ideology. There was a motion that passed 87%, I believe, 87% in favor of defining a woman as a female person and protecting single-sex spaces, and there was another one in the high 60s to be opposed to the gender transitioning of children. What did you make of these really strong numbers for these resolutions by the delegates?
Well, I think, look, it's always important, as you've put in your stories, to lay out the caveat that party policy is just that. It's where the party's members have said they stand. It's not the leader's platform. It's not what a conservative government would do in policy. But at the same time, these things are incredibly useful because, I don't support booing people that are making a contribution. But when people were speaking up against those motions, there was snickering, there was jeering. These were not majority opinions in the Conservative Party, the opposed position to these motions. They were very popular. And I think that Poilievre needs to look around and see where his base is on issues. And one example that I'll bring up, which is not the gender stuff, but the Freedom Convoy. So This was something I've obviously covered that the Liberals and the media have tried to say is politically toxic. But in this crowd, anytime someone mentioned a trucker, they were getting a huge amount of applause. And Pierre Poilievre's wife, Anna, acknowledged truckers and got huge applause. So I think they are listening, and they have to understand where their base is. And, Pierre Poilievre, at first, when he was asked about parental rights, said, it's a provincial issue. A couple weeks later, he gave a bit more of an answer. And I think anytime he's been asked that, he's started to become a little bit more aware of where his base is. And I think that's an important check and balance on leaders, is what are the members saying. And, the members haven't had a policy convention in 5 years. So this is a really important opportunity for them to tell the leader, this is who we are.
Right, for sure. I guess as a follow-up to that, we saw with the Freedom Convoy, the Conservatives going from, being a little meh on mandates, being like, oh, we support rapid tests, to being unsure about the convoy, to going unapologetically in favor of the convoy and against the mandates. Do you think over time we're going to see the same thing with some of these radical gender ideology issues where they'll slowly, because in the UK now the Labour Party is opposed to gender ideology. So do you think we're heading there in Canada too?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Doug Ford, who is not at all a hardline conservative by any stretch, has even come out and said, parents need to be the ones educating their kids and we need to stand against indoctrination. And that, for a leader like Doug Ford in a province like Ontario, is a very important development. So I think the tide is turning here. I think you've got what's happening in New Brunswick and Alberta and Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Ontario. This is a wave that will be very difficult for any politician, conservative or otherwise, to try to avoid.
So we saw something interesting too at this convention where we had Liberal ministers crashing the convention. Stephen Guilbeault came yesterday on the Friday in the morning, and Pablo Rodriguez came twice. What signal do you think this sends from the Liberal camp?
I mean, to be honest, I'm okay with it because the more the Liberals are spending of their time doing stuff like this, the less they're ruining the country. So in that sense, it's like, I'd prefer they just spend all their day just going and gate crashing conservative
we
events.
should have a convention all the time.
Yeah,
then.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. Let's just, keep all the stuff set up back here and let Pablo Rodriguez just, spin his wheels outside. I think it's a little bit of desperation. And I will say the shine has come off even to the media. Like, the questions that the mainstream media journalists were asking them were like, listen, are you in any position to judge when you look at your poll numbers right now? And they don't really have an answer to it. It's, we just need to work harder. It's like, great, then stop heckling conservatives and go and win back this trust from Canadians.
We saw some very high poll numbers recently for the Conservatives, and that's probably one of the things that's making the Liberals nervous. After this convention, after the media coverage that this gets, do you think the Conservatives are stronger coming out of this convention than they were coming into it?
I think they are, because I think there's a little bit more of a solidified message for what they stand for. I mean, Pierre Poilievre spoke for just over an hour last night, and a lot of what he said was repetitive. I mean, I'd even heard some of the jokes and, asides before about, a family moving into the old CBC headquarters and stuff like that.
I do like that. I do like that joke.
It's a great joke, and I'm saying I've heard it 9 times now.
He says it all the time.
Yeah, and stuff like that. But I think at the same time, we get a bit more of a vision because, the Conservatives are not running in an election. They don't have a platform out yet because it's early. So when Pierre Poilievre speaks, anytime it's kind of a little bit more of the picture of what message they're going to bring in. And I'm sorry, this is uncontroversial stuff. They're talking about common sense, housing, affordability. These are pretty universal messages. So I think that it shows where the Conservatives are really trying to focus their efforts, while not being afraid to still talk a little bit about the other stuff. And I think your point about gender is valid. They could do a bit more of it, but that's where their focus is.
Right, for sure. There was an analogy that someone in the States made about a cake, and you have the cake and you've got the icing, and you love the icing. The culture war stuff is the icing, but a cake isn't good when it's this much icing and this much
I disagree
cake.
with that, but anyway. On the cake thing, not on the politics
right.
thing.
Yeah. To be fair, there are some good icings
Just
out
give
there.
me the icing with a bowl. That's why I look this way. But
Well, this was great to catch up with you, Andrew. If you support our coverage and our work here at True North, and you support Andrew's podcast, My Journalism, and any other thing that we do, then please visit donate.tnc.news to make a donation. In Quebec City, for True North, I'm Elie Cantin-Nantel.